Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to talk about anthuriums, perhaps the most popular and easily accessible anthurium, this beautiful flamingo flower. So let's just get started. So you know how when you're shopping around at a Home Depot or a Lowe's or another big box store, chances are you have seen this exact anthurium. In fact, I got these two from Home Depot, I think for like 10 bucks, which is a really good deal. These are known as flamingo flowers based off of their color, but they are called the Anthurium andraeanum. And so what's beautiful about them is obviously not only their stunning green foliage that's heart-shaped, but they also have these beautiful, colorful, glossy, waxy, colorful red spates. And what you'll find is that there is many different cultivars of these that come in different colors. In fact, I have a couple other ones. One is more of a pinkish color, which I absolutely adore. I have a couple other redder type ones, and then I have a white one that isn't in the best shape, but I think I can get it back to looking fine and classy like the rest of these ones. But what I want to do is, because I've only had these for about 2 weeks now, is I want to pop these up in some decent soil, because when you buy a plant from a big box store, as we've discussed before, they don't always come in the best soil. In fact, I've read articles that say the soil that are shipped in is only meant to keep them alive for about 3 months max. So we want to make sure that these have some good soil, some good nutrients, and that they're happy, because happy plants are just happy, I guess, right? What I want to do though is add in some more color to my apartment. So what I've been doing is adding in some splashes now that we're in spring, and as we get closer to summertime, I want to make sure that things pop and it's not just green. So what I'm going to do is repot these babies, and I'm going to put them up here into these little gray boxes that I have on my wall. Pardon me if you hear me coughing at all. It's because I just got back from a work trip in Las Vegas and came back a little bit sick, under the weather. People apparently like to smoke a lot in Las Vegas, and that dry, hot air out there mixed in with that really led to a pretty bad cough. Fortunately, it's not COVID. I took some tests and they came back negative. So, woohoo. That said, there is that cough. So you'll hear that a little bit consistently throughout this. So what I'm doing is I'm taking some pretty nice rich soil and added in some more perlite to it, and that'll make it so the plant has a more breathable environment to live in based off of the soil that it's currently in. Now, the thing about these type of anthurium, like most anthurium, is that they are epiphytic, meaning that in the wild, in nature, they likely grow on the side of trees. And that is absolutely important when it comes to plant care, because you need to know how to care for certain types of plants. Not like all plants grow in ground. They're not all terrestrial. These happen to be more of the epiphytic kind. And while I am potting these babies up, I'm going to explain a little bit more to you about them. So first things first, I'm going to use terracotta just because I have a couple extra ones, and they're going to be hidden inside those gray boxes. So it's not like I'm looking for a kind of beautiful type of pot, even though most of the pots I've been trying to use are like whitish or gray, because I really like the way that those colors look in my home here in Denver. But these plants in particular, what they do is they love bright indirect light like a lot of other plants. In fact, that actually helps with these spaces coming out and growing and popping out with their beautiful colors. I have seen videos of other ones that are more purplish. You have those oranges, like I said, the light ones, the pink ones. I'm trying to collect, as I see them, more and more colors. And what I love about anthuriums, as you can see here in this video, is the roots. They always have such thick roots. In fact, I'm actually, instead of doing it in here, because what I meant to do was pot it up on there, I'm going to empty out their soil, their old soil, into this box here. This, of course, being a Bounty box that I got my, I think, like 12 things of Bounty paper towels, so we'll put it to good use, basically. And I have a couple others I need to repot as well, but we'll focus on these two today. Another thing too is that, like other Anthurium, these plants like to be a little bit moist. Now, in between waterings, you can let them dry out a little bit, but be cognizant of the fact that they do enjoy their water. And when I say that, it's also important to keep in mind that they don't want to be overwatered, because what is overwatering? It is the number one killer of our plants. And we want our plants to live and thrive and be happy and healthy, you know, because if not, then they're just going to look sickly and disgusting. And the last thing we want to do is we don't have guests over and just have dead plants everywhere, unless you're into that kind of dead plant house look type of thing. I'm a little bit concerned about that white one though. It was the only white one that I saw, but I was just so struck by its beautiful white spathe. And I'm like, all right, you know what? Even if right now it doesn't look healthy, I think I can get it back into good shape at some point. So I'm going to give it my all and do my thing and let it just try to thrive. I mean, try. I don't know how it's going to do. It could just do pretty poorly, but early on in my plant journey, though, this was probably around 2020, I had one of these plants and I just didn't know how to care for it because I didn't understand its needs, like the fact that it does like bright indirect sunlight. Never give them direct sunlight unless it's during the winter time, because if you give them direct sunlight, it can really harm not only their leaves but those space and the color, and it'll just burn them up and the plant will die out and all that not so fun stuff. But they do love high humidity, just like most Anthurium do. And so one thing you'll want to do is that, have them in an area of your home that has bright indirect sunlight. Even like a bright indirect medium type of sunlight would actually do really well. And then make sure that it's in an area that can get some humidity, whether or not you have a humidifier or if you couple it up with some other plants of, same sort. That's a good thing to do. And just like other Anthurium, they are heavy feeders. What do I mean by that? Well, fertilizer. We're talking about feeding them. And Anthurium, just like alocasia, for instance, really like their food. So what I do is every single time that I water my Anthurium, I always take just a little smidge, and this is even during the winter and spring months. Granted, I live here in Denver, Colorado, where we have 300 days of sunshine, and mind you, it is not always warm here. It is actually really cold during the winter months. But because we get that sunshine, plants are constantly growing here. So I do always make sure to just put in a little smidge fertilizer, and I use fish poop, basically, is what it is. I think it's called Alaska 511 or something like that. You can see it on the screen here, whatever it's called. But I just take a little smidge of that, put it into a bottle of water, mix it together, and boom, bam. And I'll tell you what, my Anthurium grow like crazy once they have their fertilizer, because they sure do love it. What I'm going to do is also add in some rooting hormone, because I want to make sure these roots are happy and healthy and will adjust to their new soil in their new pots. And, terracotta is always a sound way to go with pots, because it just dries out so quickly. It doesn't keep the moisture stuck in there, and that is what we want. So this fits perfectly, rather lovely, quite honestly. So I'm just going to tuck its roots in there, and I'm going to be very gentle with them, as I always try to be. Sometimes I am not, and that is okay. It's not okay, but I convince myself otherwise. And then I'm going to fill in around the pot, and because the roots, when I was able to get most of the old soil out, and because most of the roots were they look like kind of like a little jungle in there, I want to make sure that this soil gets in between them so it doesn't hinder its growth or the soil being attached to those beautiful, beautiful roots. And the roots look super healthy, which is always a good thing, because you never know when you go to like a big box store, and get a plant. You don't know what the roots are going to look like until you take it home. It's not like you can be like, hey, can I just take this plant out of its pot for a second to check its roots? The folks at a Home Depot or a Lowe's are going to be like, no, you cannot. So we are very lucky to have found ourselves some very lovely Anthurium andraeanums. And this one's, some of its spates, these red spates in here, like one of them on this one in particular, isn't really the healthiest, but that's okay because they will grow in new ones as they start thriving. And what's beautiful about these plants, and I believe I was also reading something like this, it might be like one of the second most mass produced plants, just because they are rather easy to care for once you get the hang of them and get used to them. But these beautiful, colorful spates, like these red ones here, these will last for about 2 to 3 months before they start to die off, which is actually a really long time. These plants are also related to other kind of beautiful, colorful plants. And why am I blanking on the name of one in particular that I had an absolute difficult time with and killed early on in my plant journey? Let me think of what the name is. Peace lilies. Peace lilies. Yes, and peace lilies flowers don't nearly last as long, their space, but they are related in some form to these beautiful flamingo flowers, which are native to South America. And yeah, early on in my plant journey, I killed my peace lily probably within 2 months. Yeah, within 2 months. I laugh about it, but I feel so bad. I just didn't understand its needs. I didn't understand humidity, the kind of soil it needed. I was just thinking to myself, well, every plant's like a pothos, so why don't I just give it that care? No, Kevin, that's not how it works. And you have to really study and learn every plant. It's funny because I'll have a lot of friends and coworkers ask me tips about plant care and all that stuff. And, you know, one of the things that I always tell them, and one thing that I did not do early on until somebody opened up my eyes to this, was before you go and purchase a plant, make sure you do your research on it so you can better understand its care needs, where you would situate it inside your home, and whether or not you can actually care for it. Early on, I had, and I still have, a philodendron verrucosum, but that was a rather expensive plant when I first got it, and it's still pretty pricey. But that thing nearly died right away because I simply did not realize how humid of an environment it needed. And so that was one of those things where fortunately I was able to save it before it died off, learn more about it, gave it the proper care it needed and deserved, and then got it to thrive. Now I have like cuttings of it everywhere that have been rooting up forever, and they have beautiful roots. I just haven't potted them up. This is one of those cuttings of it. It's so pretty. I love it. I had the plant to be like 3 or 4 feet tall before I was like, okay, this thing is growing out of control and I need to propagate it. They really do grow fast, those verrucosums. They grow like weeds, actually. But yeah, oh my gosh, I love how thick these roots are. They're so beautiful. And it's funny because even with these beautiful, colorful space inside these plants, my favorite part of any plant is the foliage itself, the leaves. Like, look at this beautiful anthurium leaf. Like, that to me is perfection. I absolutely love it. Call me crazy for not liking the flowers as much, or the space in this context, but I have to say it's always the foliage that really does it for me. Like I was saying earlier, when I was on my work trip this past week in Las Vegas, I was heartbroken by the lack of plants that I got to see in Las Vegas. I'm just assuming it's because of like the climate there and all that stuff, and people are more focused on, you know, gambling and all that kind of jazz. But I was really hoping to see some like interesting or unique plants I normally don't get to see. I was staying at the Wynn Encore Resort there for the week, and I did get to see some absolutely beautiful birds of paradise that were out and about down near the pool. And that was one of the highlights because they were flowering, and I love bird of paradise flowers. And as you know, if you look back at one of my more recent videos, I did a repotting of a bird of paradise. And so you can watch that and learn all about them. But I've never gotten any of mine to flower. I think it's very difficult in Colorado to get that to happen. But maybe, just one day, if I'm lucky, maybe one of them will flower. If not, I will still love them regardless. So we're going to pot up this last one by gently placing it in there. I put a little layer of soil in the bottom, and then we're just going to do what we just did before, and we're just going to put around the sides and this way and on this side. It's funny because I work remotely, and so this is only the second time I've gotten to see some of my coworkers in person, and they always ask me about plants, and I'm always curious to know because I work for a global company, and some people came in from the UK, others from just different areas from across the globe, and I always ask them about what kind of plants do you guys have where you are? What are your guys' natural plants? And I'm always jealous when I hear from my colleagues in South America who have the most stunning plants just right in their backyards. Like one of my favorite plants is my Philodendron patriciae, and a colleague of mine who lives in Brazil, he's like, "Oh, those, yeah, we just have them growing right out in the backyard." Meanwhile, a little plant, well, it started off as a little plant, and is now a big plant here that I have, but when I first got it, the plant was close to $600 to buy, and I don't regret it because it's one of my favorite plants and it brings me so much joy and happiness, but the fact it's just growing in somebody's backyard, I'm like, oh, that would just be lovely. But alas, here in a dry climate like Colorado, we don't have such good fortune. But yeah, here we go. We have them all potted up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to water them with some of that fertilizer, and then I'm going to stack them up and put them right up in there to bring some more color. I plan on doing a bigger tour of my apartment since I've redone it and really haven't given you guys that view yet. So that will be coming up soon. But in the meantime, I'm curious to know how many of you have these beautiful flamingo flowers, as they're known, and do you have any tips to share? How have yours been growing over that time? In the meantime, though, if you haven't already, please like this video, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, so you can continue to get more planty good content just like this. Again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.